Hello, my friends. This is Andy over at the Andy Falco Show, coming to you live from Brea, California. And my third day on the same topic, which I think is important. It is very unusual that I specifically do something so precisely on the same subject, but every day just is full of information which has gotten me fired up. Somebody messaged me a little bit earlier, and I was using some very strong language, and they were going, "Whoa, you're not going to say that on the air, are you?" And no, I'm going to try not to, but so very fired up. So as you're coming on, I would appreciate it if you would please comment about something, good or bad, indifferent, questions, your opinions about something that's going on. I would really appreciate the comments. Those are the things that fuel the show and get it out there. The last show that I did yesterday had over 1,000 viewers. And that was on one page. I'm also on YouTube and Twitter and Twitch and other Facebook pages, but on one page alone, there was 1,000 views. So I appreciate the shares. So share this out if you feel that it's worthy, and comment because that's the way that happens. And I appreciate it. Just really quick, as usual, I want to talk about two sponsors. Today's CBD oil. I started taking CBD oil a couple years ago. Coincidentally, when I started taking it, my life has changed. I'm healthier. I feel better. I sleep better. My blood pressure is better. Everything in my life seems to be better. Not because it has anything to do with marijuana, because it's made from the hemp plant, and with CBD1 made by Vaseo, which is the products that I promote. It has liposome technology. So go to today'scbdoil.com if you want any of that. And then we have other wellness products, and you get those at today'svaseo.com. I have a new sponsor coming up probably in about a week or two. You're going to be excited about it. Probably even more excited than these two products. But these two products change your life. And the other one will just enhance your life. Will change your life, and then we'll enhance it even more with a new sponsor that I'll be talking about later on. Oh, look at that. I have a little double thing going on there. Hold on. Let me fix this. All right. So let's talk about this topic today that I have. And it really is the cause, I think, of most of the problems in regard to George Floyd, in addition to an asshole cop who would not get his neck off of his neck. Besides that, because that's obviously the biggest thing, right? You had one cop and then three others that did nothing about what the one cop was doing. And now I have a new video that I did not see before. And this is where I got enraged when I saw the new video to me. It's not a new video to the cops and to those investigating the crime. The FBI, the U.S. Attorney, the DA there in Minneapolis, they all had these videos. They all had statements from witnesses. They all had this stuff. On my first show, remember, I told you, I said, I cannot give more than what I had as far as an opinion, because I only saw the one video at the time, which is the one that we've all seen, which is the angle from the rear of the patrol car, and where you can only see the one officer, the one who's now been arrested for murder 3, which we'll talk about that too. Everything's so stupid about this case. Mismanaged, mishandled freaking case. All right. So on day one, remember, I told you, I said, I can't tell you if it's racist and I can't tell you if it's murder, because I have one angle, right? The one angle, and it's a few minutes long, and that's all I had. But I'm here today telling you, I know that the investigative team, the DA's office, the other officers that are involved, and the FBI and everybody else that started getting involved had all this other information, all these other views that we did not have. And this people get in law enforcement, in politics, get frozen by fear. And I've seen it over and over again. And it is the death to much of these things. Some of the stuff you never see, but I've seen it over and over. And I just sit there and go, what? Make a decision, man, right? It may not be right, but you got to make a decision. You got to make try your best to make the right decision, but make a decision using your brains, using your experience, using the law, using the department's procedure manual. You use all those things and make a decision. What they are fearful of, they're fearful of upsetting someone, right? That is the biggest thing. We got a number of people that are just hand washing, milk toast. I'm so trying not to use a bad word because one of my kids is still in the house right now. wusses, right? We got just so many people that don't go outside, you might die. Don't do this because somebody's feelings are going to hurt. No, arrest the guy, right? So let's talk about. There's so many places I want to go, and I'm trying to stay on task. I'm looking here. I'm Andy, stay on task because I got so many things. Let me look at the comments really quick. Hello, Amy. Nice to see you. I just need to watch. I need to calm down because I'm going to say something very bad. Nabucco, nice to see you out of Japan. You in Japan must think we're crazy, right? And that I got people from Australia that watch the show. I got people from Canada and Japan and other countries. It's just crazy. Thank you, April. I appreciate that. That is a great picture, by the way. I like that better than I like the chat of the people in your picture, but I like that picture. That's one of my favorites. All right. And hey, April, is there a way to turn off your autofocus? I'm so sorry. What do I teach in my course? I don't know if you've ever seen my course, April, but that's, I think, like number 2 video. Turn off autofocus because I am active. When I get heated, I get active, and it's turned off now. Thank you for telling me that. I appreciate that very much. And that's one of the things that's like on video 2 of my training course on how to do live training videos. Turn off the autofocus, dummy. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Oh, Eric too. Eric thought of that too. Thank you so much. Take a deep breath. I will. I got to calm down, man. Wow. We got some stupidity going on out in this world, and I cannot stand it. You're right on track. Thank you. I appreciate the support. I want to be told also when I'm wrong. I don't mind being told I'm wrong. All right. So I have been in law enforcement now since 1984. Is that crazy? And I think about it. My son's probably going, wait a minute. 1984, that's back in the 1900s. That's in the 1900s. That's like ancient. So in 1984, I got in law enforcement. I graduated from the Reserve Academy, and one of my first assignments was the 1984 Olympics that was here in Southern California, in Los Angeles, but they had venues in Anaheim, wrestling and something else. I forget what else, in the Anaheim Convention Center. And so I've been in law enforcement for a very long time. I've seen a lot of things. And there's periods of law enforcement, right? You have periods where you would go in with full force and take things out and end problems immediately. As soon as you saw them, you'd end them. You'd come in with more than what you needed, and you'd stop the problem, and then you would leave. And then people would get upset. Well, you look like a military force and you're coming in there. And so we backed off, and then we started having barbecues in the barrio and in the ghetto, and, and carrying flowers and here's your flower. And then we saw crime rise, right? And then we got a new chief, and then things changed. Okay. Boom, and we came in there, like, get out of here. And then we started arresting people, and then you'd see crime drop down again. Right. And so and then you'd have new people come in. Well, now again, you're seeing a little too strong and too military, and then you see crime rise again. All right. So what do I mean by that? Well, there always must be a healthy balance in law enforcement between enforcing the laws with a strong presence, and we call it command presence, right? You need to have command presence as a law enforcement officer. One of these days, and I often look at my uniform, which is hanging on the wall over there, that was presented to me in a frame, and it has patches on there. It has pictures of me and my police dog and a dog leash and that kind of stuff, all in a frame and that kind of stuff. And I often look at that 175-pound shirt, not the shirt, but that I fit in there when I was 175. Would not fit in there now. And look at that and think back that, with that size, I had to have way more presence than I actually had, in me, right? I had to come off as like, you're going to die if you don't follow my commands and do what I tell you to do. Get on the ground. And I'm talking about felony suspects that are dangerous, right? And there's that you have to come in with a little bit of oomph. But you need to know where that should stop. There's a line, right? Understanding where this line is very tough for so many people. Law enforcement, military, politicians. So we have some people that go overboard, and then we have some people that just say, oh, I don't want to hurt your feelings, right? We have that down here. So we have these two things, right? I wish I could, Bev. It's a really big frame. I'd bring it over here. It's super big. One of these days I'll bring it over here and I'll show it to you. Maybe tomorrow if I can do it. And so that's always been in existence. You got to understand this. The problem is, and I'm going to get a little bit political here, but you have red states and blue states, right? And we've seen, and again, this is going to get me in trouble with some people, and I understand that. Send me the messages, do all that kind of stuff. But we see in the blue states where most of these problems exist. New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Minneapolis, Minnesota, where you see, because they're so afraid. They're so afraid of showing a strong presence of law and enforcement of laws. We know we got in California, we got sanctuary cities. No, we can't hurt anybody that come over. Got to be kind, and we got to let prisoners out. We got you. It's too far, right? We got that line. If I were to draw a line, I would draw a line, and I would draw a line, and where down here is it's too soft, right? If we're going to have peace and harmony and love, you have to have strong law enforcement. I know it seems strange. It's the same thing when I'm training dogs. You can't just let dogs walk all over you with love. I teach it all the time. If you watch any of my Falco Canine Academy videos, when you are too loving, you have problems. When you have too loving with your children, you have problems. You have children that will not leave your house until they're 30. Because you're going, oh, well, I don't want you to go out and get hurt. And I just want to give them a place with a roof over the head. And it's too difficult and too hard for them. So I'm not going to make them move out when they're 24, 25, right? That is obviously not how I operate. I kicked my daughter out when she was 19 because she wouldn't get a job. I kicked her out of the house. I took her stuff in a truck and I took it out and I took it to another location and I kicked her out and I pushed her out. In less than a week, she got 2 jobs. She had her own car. She got her own apartment. Our relationship is better than it's ever been. And she goes, you're right. I needed to get my ass kicked a little bit. I need to be pushed out there. That may not be for you. All right. But when we're talking about the difference between blue states and red states, and this is just one of those examples, if you just really look at it, the biggest problems we have with crime, shootings, all kinds of problems in relationship to crime, it happens to be in blue states, if you don't mind me saying so. And it's because they're so afraid. They're so fearful of law and order and placing somebody under arrest because they're trespassing and they're sleeping on a sidewalk and crapping on it, right? And again, this is going to come back. I'm going to bring this back to George Floyd. I just want to lay the foundation because it's important to understand that you cannot be too soft on crime. You can't be too hard on crime because you're going to have another problem, right? You can't be like out there arresting everybody all the time and hitting them over the head with a billy club. No, right? But you need to have a strong command presence that says we have authority, we have these laws in place, and they must be followed. If we're going to have a peace and harmony, right? I live in the city of Brea. You can drive around, you can walk around at night and not without anything. I leave the doors unlocked all the time. I'm in California. I'm in Orange County. I'm only about a mile away from another city that has a lot of crime. But within this city, will they come over? And when we have crime, what is it that we have? The suspects are criminals that come from other cities. They're generally not anybody that's here in Brea, generally. And again, I'm not saying everybody's perfect. I'm just telling you that I leave the house all the time. Now, hopefully you don't know where I live and criminals aren't watching. I'm going to have to lock my doors now for about 6 months. But I'm telling you, I live in a city that's clean, right? There's not a lot of potholes. If somebody's trespassing, somebody calls the police right away. They're stopped and they're questioned and they're kicked out of the area because they don't belong, because we have law and order, right? I have the Brea police are, anyway, I have my history of the Brea police, but sometimes they're a little slow to respond and that kind of stuff. But overall, you can't be fearful enforcing the law. All right, so. That is that on the blue state, red state, and this is the problem. And so now we're going to address the George Floyd situation. God rest his soul. God bless his family. And sorry this happened to him, even though he was committing a crime. He should have been committing the crime, but he didn't deserve to be treated the way that he was treated because we have laws for that too. And so now we're going to go to the other end, right? We have Minnesota. Minneapolis, Minnesota, Minneapolis Police Department, and others that I have been involved in investigating in relationship to other issues regarding their police officers. And there is this inability to enforce their own policies and procedures of common sense, of the brotherhood, the blue brotherhood that gets out of hand, and internally they don't do anything about that either. I'm learning now. Yesterday, I think, as far as I heard, he had 3 prior. This officer who got arrested, and I don't even want to say his name. He's a dickwad, but that he had these. Sorry, son. he has 3 prior use of force investigations. I learned today he had at least 13. Right, the number's gone way up. There's 13. In what police department does a police officer have that many incidents violence under color of authority or assault under color of authority or in any type of investigation continue to work as a police officer? What world am I living in? Right? What's the problem? What is the issue? Who's asleep at the switch on this thing? And everybody knew it. This is the word I'm getting on the streets is that they knew this guy was out of control. Somebody brought up one of the cases here in Fullerton where somebody was killed and the officer that was involved is, there's different opinions and that kind of stuff. I know this. I knew him and he was fired from a previous police department because he was too heavy-handed. And then somebody else hired him. Like, why would you hire a guy that got fired for being heavy-handed? And heavy-handed is a word that I'm going to use just because I don't want to get too focused on something because it will call out names of people and things like that. But you cannot you can't hire somebody that got fired from another police department and showed that they cannot handle being a police officer and then bring them into your police department. Especially if you do a police department that for the most part is known for being a pretty decent police department. And you're going to bring a guy in who has a history with all the other people that are out there to be hired. You have all kinds of other people that you can hire, and you hire a guy that got fired, right? He didn't quit. He got fired for other things that were related to being too heavy-handed as a police department. And it just really is the dumbest BS that I've ever heard. So let me go, and I want to balance out because I know, again, 3 days ago I was saying I couldn't say that he needed to be arrested, right? Because I only saw one camera angle. I didn't know that he had priors. I said that he probably did, right? On that day, I said there's no doubt that this isn't the first time he's done this. You cannot see a guy do what he was doing on the camera and not know, as a police officer, as me being in somebody in the business since 1984. And when I review these cases and look at these cases, I go, "What? Does this guy have any other incidents of doing this?" They go, "Oh yeah, he has five others, truers, but 13, I don't know that I've ever had that." And I get a lot of cases. So you have this guy, right? And I only see one angle. So I'm very careful about making a decision when I'm only seeing one angle. But now now confirming that the investigators, the DA's office, this idiot, what's his name? Flynn. No, not Flynn. Sorry. Michael Freeman, I think is the guy's name, right? That's the DA. Hold on, I want to confirm. Because I am going to say his name because he's an idiot too. So hard being so much smarter than all these other people, but sorry. Yeah, Michael Freeman, the county attorney. Yeah. All right. So Michael Freeman, he gets off the camera today and goes, well, or not today, yesterday, when he was saying, there may be some stuff that shows that he wasn't. Like, what? Why do you throw that out there? What are you talking about? What is it that could possibly show that this was justified? I didn't think it could be possible that anything could be justified. But he said that when he saw all the stuff that I saw today. Like he saw this other angle. I'm going to show you this other angle really quick. First, I'm going to get rid of these things so that you can see it much clearly. And again, thank you for those of you that told me my autofocus was going crazy there. I'm going to show you this other angle. And again, I apologize and warning, this includes images and audio. Some viewers may find upsetting and disturbing. So this is the other angle. This is the other angle that I only saw earlier today. And this is the one that kind of set me off and got me all freaking riled up. And I just said, what the hell were they waiting for? So let me go ahead and play this video really quick. If you haven't seen it yet, this is the other angle that I didn't see.
My face is gone. I can't breathe, man. Please let me stand. Please, I can't breathe. My face is gone. I can't breathe, man. Please.
All right. Oops, sorry. So you got that other angle and you got body cam, and they got other things that we don't have. They have access to. They have statements from other police officers. They got a whole bunch of other stuff. And they waited until today to arrest that officer when they knew, everybody knew that one thing that would have possibly helped with what's been going on for the last 2 days is if they would have arrested one or all four of those officers, right? I agree with at least arresting 3 of those officers. I had no idea personally that the other 2 were on the rest of his body. And you can hear him saying, I can't breathe. And he was begging, please, I can't breathe. He wasn't saying, get off me, mother effers. He wasn't saying you guys are a bunch of dickwads. He wasn't saying any of the things that we would hear if he's a violent criminal that we're worried about by getting off of him. None of that was happening. There is a point where you have to get off. I'm telling you, I've taught hundreds of officers about use of force, hundreds, if not thousands of officers over the years of training all over the United States and Canada and Peru and Ireland, that you have to stop. When you know that you have control, once you know that he has given up, once you know that he's no longer a combatant, is the moment you have to stop. Every time. I've never lost that message ever, that it's okay to give another noogie before you get. No, it's not okay to give another noogie. It's not okay to give another knee before you leave. I've never, ever said that. Bev Lawson worked with me over at Anaheim Police Department, and I'm pretty sure that she will tell you that she's never heard of any stories where I went above and beyond what it took to take somebody into custody. Am I going to tell you that I've never hurt anybody? No, I've hurt somebody. I shot somebody in the leg. It wasn't a good shot. I just got him in the leg. I winged him, but it took him down, and we were able to put him under arrest. But I was using a shotgun from very far away. Bad weapon for what I was trying to do. I should have been using my handgun. And my dog bit somewhere near the name 80 people, somewhere just short of 80 people. He bit people. One time he nearly tore the chest muscle, the breast muscle off of somebody's body. He tore the calf off of somebody. We caused a lot of bleeding. Some guy almost bled to death because I had a backup officer who wouldn't put the suspect in her car because he was bleeding, and I had to force her to put the guy in the back of the car and force her to take the guy to the hospital, which was simply across the street. I could have put him over my shoulder to go across the street. So I'm telling you, I have hurt people seriously in the process of arresting people. So I know what it's like to hurt people and know what the responsibility is once you've hurt them to get the medical attention. You don't continue to, push in the wound like you would see on TV. You don't continue to fight with them after they've given up. Once you have control and take them into custody, you take them into custody and you take them to the medical center, Anaheim West Med or UC Dye or wherever it is that you need to take them. You take them immediately. You don't wait. You don't wait. You don't hesitate. You take them. Staying on this guy when he was handcuffed with 3 bodies on top of him, and you, the DA, with all this information, waited until today to arrest him? Are you kidding me? You know why? Because he was afraid to make a decision. He was frozen with fear with what people might think. He didn't know what to do. This is the thing. All the excuses that he gives, they get him and the governor and the freaking mayor and all the other people involved over there in Minneapolis are afraid. We're afraid of making a decision, and it's cost on both sides, right? When you have this information, have everything there, the excuse, he said, well, we want to make sure and have enough to prosecute. That is such baloney. It is baloney. That has never been a criteria for making an arrest. When you suspect somebody of committing a murder, you don't always have all the evidence that will allow you to convict him at that point. The investigation, once you've made an arrest, sometimes is everything that you're going to do. Sometimes you just have somebody saying, that's him, right? You got a dead body. You see a guy walking from left to right, and somebody says, that's him. We go over there. He starts to run. We tackle him. We put our handcuffs on him, and then we take him to jail. And then we try to figure out, because in a felony, not a misdemeanor, but in a felony, you can arrest somebody as a law enforcement officer whether or not we saw it or not. We just have to suspect that the person that we are in contact with is one of the people that's possibly involved in committing the crime. And we can arrest them and take them there during the initial part of the investigation. We do it all the time. I said that yesterday. And it's BS that the DA, well, we want to make sure we had everything that we needed to make sure that we could get a conviction. Not on any planet that I've been involved with in regard to law enforcement. What they're afraid of is because it was a police officer, they're making a mistake. Remember, I told you on day one that you got to be careful when you arrest somebody like this, especially this heated thing, that they might be released. But you're only careful for a second until you see 4 or 5 different video angles. Hear what the suspect is telling you. I'm done. I can't breathe. Get off of me. What are you doing? And they still sit there with the knee on the neck with 3 other people. The guy can't move. At least get the knee off the neck. Stay on his feet if you have to. Nobody needed to be on his neck. And they had all this the last 2 days when people are rioting, right? Again, understanding that the people rioting are people that really could care less about George Floyd. Most of the people rioting and stealing crap out of the TV, they're just happy that they have an opportunity to take a TV out of a Target, right? And break a window and light a police car on fire and light the police station on fire. Those idiots are more, they need to be arrested. But remember what I said yesterday. Again, I'm going to go back to something I said yesterday. Oh, thank you. I have a beer here because I knew I was going to need it. Is that what I said yesterday is that you cannot, you can, all right? You can't, they could have went in there with all the force, tackled people, handcuffed them with flex cuffs and thrown them in the back of the police cars and a paddy wagon, if they still have a paddy wagon. I'm not sure if they do. And all this, and they could have done all that. But the problem is the perception is really bad. It's going to create more problems because you're arresting somebody for stealing the television, but you're not arresting somebody that killed somebody on video that now we could see from several different angles that there's no excuse for what it is they did, right? You're not arresting that guy or those guys, but you're arresting people who are stealing television. Do they deserve to be arrested for stealing television? Yeah, absolutely. But in relationship to what is going on, you have to get the feel for the room, right? The feel for the room is that we got to do something really, that we really don't feel like doing. It's going to cause some problems with us in the police department, but we can't, there's nothing we can do. This officer put us in this situation. The officer put us, it's not my fault. It's not the mayor's fault or the governor. We have to move now. And we have to move now because the video is telling us that we have to move now because we could see the guy was really put in a position to die on these three officers that did not release him when they should have released him because he had given up and when he was handcuffed. And that is the problem that we have here. We're so fearful of making a decision. What I have done, and again, I've been doing this a long time, and people are going to say, well, you need to know more than the governor. My job has been to know more than most people in relationship to use of force. Most of it has to do with dogs in my cases, but it still falls into the same thing of use of force. I've read tons of procedure manuals. I have the advantage that I've testified in 100 times in court. I have the advantage I've read a lot of procedure manuals. I have the advantage that I've looked through a bunch of police organizations, bylaws and manuals and things like that. I've trained hundreds of officers. I'm going to tell you about a scenario of how I know fear is the biggest enemy of law enforcement and government. I'm going to tell you about a scenario that I run that is the biggest thing, the biggest problem that we have to deal with as far as law enforcement. And I'm telling you, I have the advantage of knowing more about this subject than some of the people that get thrown into this position and they never thought they would. All right. So you have a mayor who wanted to run for mayor because he thought he could just do a good job and, build some parks and handle a budget and do some other stuff, but never really understood what it's like to be in a situation he's in today. And he can't make a decision because he's too afraid. He's too afraid he's going to piss off these people. He's too afraid he's going to piss off these people. It don't matter. You're going to piss people off no matter what. The one thing is you just have to make a decision and you got to do it now. You can't wait until you have more information. You wait until you have more information, then you have chaos. You have to make a decision now. It may be wrong, but you have to make a decision now. And the fear of making that decision is what has caused all this problem. And again, I know people are, what do you know? You live in Brea, you're just this dude who's having has this little show and that kind of stuff. But I'm just telling you the experience that I have comes from having to deal with these things. I get called in after these things have occurred and say, what do you think? And I go, well, I need reports. I need videos. I need depositions. I need training manuals. I need the history of the police officer. I need to know how many times he's been. It's all the same stuff, right? The stuff that we're going to look at now is the same stuff that I can see is the problem here. All right. So really quick, let me look at some of these things just to make sure I'm not skipping something. Somebody may, wow, a lot of comments. Thank you for all the comments. Let's see, that's the last one I saw. What's this? This looks good. Hurt feelings syndrome needs to stop. It's literally killing our. It is absolutely. Oh, the cancel culture is just out of. They had the loudest voice, and people keep responding to the counterculture, which is like just the biggest piece of crap that's going on right now. Spare the rest, spoil the child. Right. Thank you. Absolutely. I hear what you're saying. The love thing, but I do believe you can give tough love. Absolutely tough love. Yep. It may not feel good to the recipient, but it's being given. And that's what I tell my kids all the time. I just told one of my sons, my 9-year-old, the other day, is that because he said no to me when he wasn't supposed to. And I talked about how much I love him. I said that the fact that you say that is the reason why you're being, being disciplined. And it's because I love you. You need to understand the rules and boundaries of authority and what your responsibility is, at least as far as schooling and what I tell you to do and that kind of stuff. And my love for you is putting me in the position to showing you how important that is. And so, yes, so what it is you're saying. We had that discussion just yesterday. Law and order, yet love to drop ridiculous laws on those who are lawful. Exactly. It's a leadership issue, nothing. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I love you guys. And watching that video several times, that officer, aka Dickwad, yeah, kept us cool the entire time. Yeah, there's nothing. Oh, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, it's cold-heartedness is what it is. He's cold-hearted. That's what I'm starting to waver a little bit on. I don't think you could get murder one. Now, remembering when I was saying you can't charge him with murder, I'm talking about the California statute of murder is different than the Minnesota or the Minnesota statute for murder. They have murder 1, 2, and 3, which I can probably get into now. That especially what April just wrote, his facial expressions, that he's sitting there. He's not in danger, right? The reason you continue with force is because you're afraid of your life or the safety of others. You're concerned for your safety, your life, or the life or safety of others is when you're using force to take somebody to custody. If this guy gets away, potentially he can harm somebody else, or he can harm me or one of my fellow officers. And so I'm using force until I can be relieved of that fear of him hurting me or somebody else. All right. Once that fear is gone, you stop. And you can tell that fear is non-existent based on what April said and noticed in the video, is that he's as calm as a cucumber. He's looking around, right? He's not focused on what's happening here. And he's kind of sitting there, and then he kind of puts more pressure. You can see him put more pressure on his neck from the other camera angle. And then the fact that he's got 2 other guys on him. He's a big man. No, I've had to go against a very large man with me and my police dog, and it was a little scary there. But once he was in custody, I did the same. What I'm telling you, I handcuffed him, got him in my patrol car, which when he got in the patrol car, it caused my patrol car to kind of, not mine because I put him in somebody else's, caused the patrol car to move. He was that big of a man, 300-something pounds of muscle. And yes, I was able to handcuff him with just me and my police dog. All right. So you don't necessarily always need 3 guys to lay on top of him. So back to April's point. And that's where I go. There's no doubt that that the murder statute they used, after reading the murder, I read all of the statutes for murder in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and it should be murder 2, not murder 3. And it's, again, showing me the weakness of that DA. And I'm gonna come to that subject too. But April, you're absolutely right. The for sure is of the way he was acting is why it should be murder 2, not murder 3. I don't know where they're coming up with this idea that it's murder 3. Okay, so now on the subject of what they charged him with, I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I was going to do it later, but let me just hit it now because we're talking about it. Is that I heard also somebody say, well, we only charge them with what they could, and then maybe they'll raise it later. That is not true. I don't know who these people are. And I go, when did that become a thing too? Now, I know some cops that kind of think that way. We'll just charge them with what we can. No, never. I've never taught that to the officers I've been responsible for training, especially when it involves arresting somebody and the dog is used, is that when you arrest somebody, a real criminal, right? A real criminal. When you arrest somebody, you charge them with the strongest crime that fits, whatever that is, whatever the strongest crime is that fits. You use that crime, and you possibly use multiple. So in the case of a domestic violence case, so me being a family crimes detective, when I would go to the DA's office to file my felony charges against a man who beat up his wife or a woman who beat up her husband, I would go with every charge at the highest level I could possibly find. I'm going to explain why. Right. This is an abuse of power. I'm telling you, this is the way it needs to be sometimes. And I'm going to share with you why that is. And so I'm going to use domestic violence because it's the easiest one to use. So in the course of the domestic violence, when you used to have phones that were plugged into a wall, that's when I was a detective, or even in a cell phone, when the wife is getting ready to call the police, the husband or the boyfriend or the fiance, whatever it is, will oftentimes take the phone and pull it out of the wall if it's a wire, or it'll take the cell phone and slam it on the ground and step on it, right? That is a separate crime. There's a separate statute for not allowing the victim to phone for help. So you have that crime. You have the assault if you have an injury, redness or bruising or a cut, traumatic injury. Any type of traumatic injury is one type of domestic violence. Then you have another domestic violence where they're pushed, but there's really no injury, and there's a lesser one. If you can find a scratch or a red mark, oh, look at there, there's a little bit of a red mark there on the shoulder from when she got hit up against the wall, you charge for the felony, not the misdemeanor. Right? Charge for the felony, not the misdemeanor, even though it's kind of like, well, that's just a little red. Okay, charge for the felony anyway. And we're also going to put the charge of this disabling the communication, which is the phone. And then if she was trying to leave and he wouldn't let her leave, or he put her in a car and took her somewhere else, we're going to charge with kidnapping. And then what else? There's something else that I've charged people with. Terrorist threats. And so if he says, when I get out, I'm going to effing kill you. So you take the highest felony, you take the pulling the phone out of the wall or destroying the cell phone, you take the kidnapping, and what was the other one? Oh, terrorist threats, right? You take all and you charge all of them, right? This is what you do. That is not I don't go in there with just the, pulling the phone out of the wall. I don't start and then file that with the DA and then go into court and hope that we can go up. You can't go up. It's impossible to go up, because what's happening in court, and you've seen it all the time, you see it on television, is what they do is they begin to negotiate, right? The DA and the prosecuting attorney, so that they don't have to go to court and all this other kind of stuff. And they say, hey, if you will plead to the lesser offense of this and this, you go to jail for 5 years, then we will settle for that. And that way you don't have to go to trial. But if we go to trial, we're going to charge you, we're going to use all those other things, and you're going to spend 15 years or 20 years or 25 years in jail. And this becomes a very powerful tool in order to get some time on a guy who needs to serve time. If you charge somebody with the minimal and the minimum, there's nowhere to go but freedom. Do you understand that? And so if I'm only charging with the misdemeanor domestic violence and maybe pulling the phone out of the wall, there's going to get, which happens all the time, misdemeanor assault and battery, not related to domestic violence, assault and battery. He gets, $100 fine and a week in jail, and then he's free to go out there and beat the wife again. Do you understand? So I don't know where this is coming from. I don't know that anybody, just because it's another state does not mean that that's not done. So it's ridiculous that I heard today on all the reporting that, well, they're charging him with the least one, and then later they're going to bring up the charge. Now, maybe once they get him in and question him and he cops out, then they may charge. But it never goes that way. It never goes up. It never goes up. I would be shocked if it goes up to murder 2 in relationship to the Minnesota laws. And so it is totally ridiculous, this thing that I heard today. It's like they just want to go, oh, let's at least go get him and arrest him for no. Based on what I saw on the video, based on the other angles that I saw, there's no excuse for doing what they did after he was handcuffed. No excuse. Whatever it took to get him on the ground. And what I understand, he was in the car. They pulled him back out. I understand that. Another ridiculous thing. Well, why would you do that? And so whatever that was all about, you charge him with the most. And then when it comes to court, all the other things, then they can reduce it down to murder 3, because that's what's going to happen. Either way you look at it. But from murder 3, manslaughter, all they're going to do is reduce it down to assault under color of authority. And that will be dropped down to that. Right now, it's 25 years for murder 3. It would have been 40 years for murder 2, which he deserves at least 40 years for doing what he did. It's caused problems all over all of the United States. What he did not only murdered a man who shouldn't have been murdered, who had a family, but it's caused another death, right? I think there's been one death from the rioting, destruction, not only in Minnesota, but now it's going to be spreading across the United States. He deserves 40 years, not 25, which is going to be reduced down to something like 5 or 10. And then with good behavior, he'll be out in 2. Do you see what I'm saying? You cannot charge with the most minimum charge, because you have nowhere to go but down, unless you got to charge with the most that you can squeak by, even sometimes squeak it in. I told you, a little red mark, right? That's a traumatic injury. Anything that you can see on a body during domestic violence is traumatic injury. And you charge for the traumatic injury. Like, it's not like a stabbing, right? That is traumatic. But I'm going to charge with that, knowing, that they're going to reduce it down to a lesser charge. But you got to start there to get to a place where at least you get something you deserve. Wow. All right. I don't think there was a reason to even use a taser, as I see it. George Floyd was subdued, and that should have ended the need for increased and continued force of any kind. Just my perspective. It's a good perspective. It's absolutely correct. All right. With all that in mind, I'm going to tell you just one more story. We've already gone for 39 minutes and kind of tell you how I know that fear is something that cripples law enforcement officers, law enforcement leadership, political leadership, and people in charge. You had, I mean, just for example, I mean, just to share with you what it is. You had the governor of the state, who said in the conference that he was speaking on, the press conference, is that, well, we didn't do anything because the mayor hadn't asked for it yet. What? He isn't a young man, right? This governor's not a young man. He's been around. He was around during Rodney King, based on what he looked like as far as his age. Now, I know some people look way older than they actually are sometimes, but he was around during the time of Rodney King. He was around during some of the other riots that we've had that are not coming to mind right now, but they rarely go well, right? And knowing the history of what happens when this kind of thing happens, this is something that was caught on video. You can see him dying. You can see him being killed in action on video. And you wanted to wait until the mayor asked to really get off your ass and do anything? Really? Now he says, well, we were watching, and no, you have enough. We already know this from prior in Anaheim, right? In my little tiny city of Anaheim, when we saw things getting out of hand, we go, all right, we need to call the SWAT team, and we call the SWAT team for some very minor stuff. Why? Because it's always better to be over prepared and be ready for something than it is to be underprepared and be late to the party. Right? You're late to the party, shit's out of hand, and it's crazy. And now you're trying to swim upstream, trying to get through all the bodies because you were late to the party. If you're first to the party and then you can push things down before they get big, you've smoldered a little fire instead of waiting until there's a blaze, right? And so you have this governor who's old enough to know that when people are seen being murdered between a white cop and a black man, whether it's racist or not, bad things happen. And why aren't you already mobilizing what you think you're going to need in case something is bad and getting it ready, and then calling the mayor and say, hey, I'm pretty sure you're going to need some help on this. So let's get on this before it gets out of hand. Based on what we know from what's happened across the United States and other countries in the past, we know that when people get riled up and things start happening on day one, right? We need to at least be prepared and ready to go. Based on what I heard in the press, well, we were waiting. He hadn't asked for help yet, so we didn't do anything until he asked for help. Now, when you're asked for help, now you got to get everybody together. You got everybody dressed and ready to go. You got to call people at home. They got to get in their cars. They got to drive down. You got people coming from all over Minnesota, not just from Minneapolis. They're coming from all over the place and maybe other states. You're getting the tires pumped up because those trucks haven't moved in a while. You're getting gassed up. A lot of stuff is happening. You're too late. It was the dumbest thing. It's because that people were I hope nothing really happens. It's again frozen in fear. You don't want to show that you're going to show force. Well, we don't want to show a bunch of people that are already angry that we're going to. No, you show force in a way that you're trying to keep peace. You have to show force to keep peace sometimes. This isn't a new concept. It's been trained in the academy. It's been trained in military. It's been trained everywhere. And sometimes you have to come in there and roll with some power to keep the peace. Right? And they're so afraid. Well, we just saw that when you use too much. No, it's two different things. That was abuse of power. Abuse of power is different than use of force to keep peace. Abuse of power, use of force to keep peace are two different things. And you can't be afraid to do that just because of that. All right. So how do I know this is a huge problem? Well, I used to do this scenario. I've done it 100 times, if not, again, I kind of go back. It's like 900 times, maybe 1,000 times I've done this in many, many states. I saw a particular problem with this scenario in the South and in the Midwest. It tends to be that more officers in California and in this region tend to be trained a little bit better. Our police academies used to be higher stress. And so when we hire police officers and they go through the academy, and the stress that you get in the academy will weed out those people that can handle stressful situations. Do you understand and do you realize, those of you, that when you're a police officer and you go to a call and things begin to deteriorate really fast, you have to continue to think in a way that is clear and concise, even though you're being shot at or you're having stuff thrown at you. You have supervisor yelling at in your ear because he wants something done, and then you have people doing a whole bunch of other stuff at the same time. Sometimes you're driving at a very high rate of speed. You have to continue to think clearly to make positive decisions as you're getting there and once you arrive. And once you see whatever's happening, you have to make the right call as far as either you're going to shoot somebody, you're going to stay holstered, you're going to use a taser, you're going to use a stick, you're going to use whatever tool you're going to have. You have to be able to think clearly when things are happening. Is there no doubt in your mind that not everybody can do that? Not everybody can do that. It doesn't make me special. It just makes me, I happen to be one of those people that can do that. I was raised by a very strong father who was very strong, right? And so whatever would happen in my life, I was able to go in these things and have stuff happening around me and yet be able to stay on sound. And this goes back to Bev, maybe she remembers, there's times where people did not think I was in trouble when I was in fact in trouble. The couple comments from time to time would be made like, we couldn't tell that you're really in trouble because you were so calm. Well, I was trying to stay calm because I didn't want to panic anybody when they were coming there. I don't want people driving there so quickly that they crash and die, but I did need some help. And I wanted, hey, 3K3, I need assistance. If I can get about 5 or 6 officers, we got something going. And I would try to talk that way because I didn't want anybody to panic to get there. All right. So understanding that is one of the things that needs to be done. So I go off and now I'm an instructor. I'm training cops all over the place. And I have one scenario, and I'm going to actually use the board here if you don't mind. And I know this is getting maybe, I hope it's on track. So I would find a building in the area that we're training. So here's a big, gigantic warehouse building. All right. I would have an actor, right? So I'd have an actor here. That's my actor. And I would be standing here, like right around here with a clipboard in my hand. So I'd have a clipboard in my hand. All right. The scenario is that there's a burglary alarm going off. That's a bell. That's a bell. All right. That's an alarm. So an alarm's going off at this building. This officer, right? This is the primary officer. He arrives first, or she arrives first. And there's another officer here who has a canine. All right, that's a canine. That doesn't look like a canine, but that's a canine. All right, so he has a canine. Now, this handler is told at the beginning of the scenario that the call is a burglar. You've been dispatched to a burglar alarm. You have another officer that's arrived before you. He's the primary officer, and you're to meet him because the alarm's going off, but he noticed that there's a broken window. Appears to be freshly broken with some computer parts on the outside of the window that have been falling on the ground, like a mouse is on the ground. And so he's asked for you to expedite and get there because he wants to shut down the perimeter of the building and need you there quickly. And you are responding to that call. That's the call. All right. So he knows that ahead of time. Now you can, we tell them you can either take your car as far as you want, or you can bark it down the street. It's up to you. However you would handle this call in your city is how you're supposed to handle it. So sometimes they would bring their car like right up, because there's no sense in this incident to necessarily park down the street, because if there's a suspect here, he already knows that you're there, right? He can hear the officer. There's no sense necessarily parking down the street. So most canine handlers would do the right thing and they would pull their car up fairly close. And so this is the canine unit and the canine handler, and typically they get out with their dog. All right. So they get out with their dog. I hope this is making sense so far. So that's the scenario. And I love this scenario because I really felt that it tested the officer's decision-making, and I'm going to share with you why. So, and I'm going to share with you some of the things that happen. So once he arrives and he begins to walk to about this point, again, this is me watching and evaluating. I'm not saying anything. They're supposed to ignore me. I'm invisible, right? Once this officer gets to about this point here, this actor, he comes out and he stands out here and he points. All right. So now this guy is out here. So now that officer is out in the open. So this is a dark alley. So this is usually at night. There's sometimes a building over here. Sometimes there's not. It depends. Or there's a fence. But it's dark. It's really dark out. I find the darkest building in the area that we're supposed to be training. At the moment he reaches here, you can hear this officer now is about here, right? And some officers with their dog. I should have drawn these ahead of time so it looks more like a dog. So that's a dog. And so he gets about here where he's on this corner. At that moment, I have a radio in my hand and I can hit the button. I have an actor who's over here with a gun, the starter pistol. So he's got a starter pistol. At this moment, when I click my mic. When I click my mic, he can hear that. It makes a sound. And bam, he shoots the gun. Makes a loud noise. It's the loudest blank gun I could find. And it goes boom. At that moment, this guy hits the ground, and he's on the ground right there in the alley. He's about 6 feet, 7 feet away from the corner of this building. It's dark. It is pitch black. You cannot see. If you were to come around and look around the corner, you can't see him. He's probably in a car. If I have a car, he's behind some bushes, or he's on the other side of this building right here, where he comes out and makes that fight, and then he goes back, and nobody can see him. This officer's on the ground screaming, I've been hit. They hit me in the thigh. My leg's broken. I can't move. I can't get up. And all he's supposed to do as an actor is he's supposed to scream in pain. I'm in pain, and he's rolling. I can't get up. And then now you have the scenario. That's when the scenario starts. It's the best scenario that you can ever have in your entire life. I was so proud when I came up with the scenario, and handlers hated it. But they learned to love it because it put them in a real situation. Now, again, this is training. Mind you, this is training. This is usually in a week-long training program where we have other scenarios that aren't as dramatic as this one. This is a traumatic scenario that I purposely created to test their ability to think under pressure. He is supposed to scream, and when it's a woman police officer, it's even better. But I don't always have a woman actor that I could use. But they're screaming, I've been shot. You can't leave me here. Come and get me. Help me. I don't know what to do. He's going to shoot me again. And he's screaming. And now he's like behind this cover, like pushed up against the wall. And he's got his dog. The dog is barking and growling at the victim police officer on the ground. The dog, and he's trying to get to him, right? Because the dog cannot see the bad guy down the road. It is chaos. It is chaos. It is the best scenario. Is it real? Yes, it can be real. And you have officers. Okay, if I have 100, so in most of these, I would have somewhere around 50 to 100 officers that would go through this during a training week. And out of, say, let's do 100%. So you have 100%, right? You're 100% of the officers. 80%, if not 90, somewhere in the 80% to 90% across the United States, they tried to send their dog from this corner. Where does their dog go? Does it go down and because the dog knows, or the guy down range with a gun? No. Every dog went and attacked the person on the ground. And he's already shot. Now the dog is on him, biting him, right? But he's got either the dog has a muzzle on, so the dog's in there hitting the suspect with the muzzle. And now this officer is stuck on the corner, and now he doesn't know what to do. And they go, get your dog. What are you going to do with your dog? And they're here. They're trying to call the dog back. The dog won't come back. Why? Because the victim officer is on the ground, and the dog is enjoying the shit out of himself by hitting him with the muzzle. And the guy, get him off. I'm bleeding. And you see the panic in the secondary officer. He doesn't know what to do. And I'm smiling, but it was one of the best scenarios to test somebody's mettle and what it is they can do. Sometimes they would go out and they would fire off their blank gun a couple times downrange, which is fine, but not necessarily the right thing to do, but it was fine. And then they would grab their dog and pull their dog and then grab the guy by the pants and drag him over here. Some guys had the strength, but they also had the adrenaline to drag both their dog and the suspect back behind cover. And if that happened, then I would hit the thing again and they'd fire another round. And I'd say, well, the guy just hit you or your dog or the other guy. And then they would be like all sweaty and panicked. I would say scenario over. All right. So you'd have those guys. I'd say 80%. 80%. That's very high percentage. All right. Another 5% would send their dog and not get their dog. They continue to yell and yell and yell. And then at some point I would have to say, dude, go get your dog. I'll freeze the scenario. Go get your dog because you're going to kill my actor. My actor's getting hit by your dog. You got to get your dog. So get your dog. And I would stop. I say, okay, let's do that again. Let's start from scratch. Now knowing what your dog's going to do, what would you do? Tell me what you would do. And I do it just like that. Tell me what you would do now. I go, no, I need to know now what you're going to do. I want to know later. I need to know now. What are you going to do with your dog? And I would stand there with my clipboard and say, what are you going to do? You got to do something. Your friend, your fellow officer out there bleeding to death. He's out in the open. The guy still has a gun. We don't know where he's at. What are you going to do? And they go, and some people, 1%, 2% would say, I don't know. I had at least in I'm going to say Wyoming. It was in Wyoming. I had at least 7 officers say, I don't know what to do. We've never done anything like this. I don't know what to do. I said, okay, but do something. What are you going to do? And they would say, they just broke down and they say, I don't know what to do. I go, what do you mean you don't know what to do? You got to do something, man. You got to do something. What are you going to do with your dog? Do you need your dog right now? No, because it's the worst thing. I go, then tie the dog. See that door that's right behind you? There'd be a door almost always, or a tree. There'd be a door here or a tree or something we would have here. a car sometime, I would always have something. I said, you see anywhere around here that you can either tie your dog to it or put your dog inside? Oh, I didn't think about that. Okay, good. And they tie the dog to the doorknob. That would usually be the first thing. Tie the dog to the doorknob. Now it's just you, your victim officer, and now the suspect. Now what are you going to do? Let's do something. You got to do something. And then they would make some decisions. One of the things is the best thing they could do is get in their car. They never think about leaving here, but you can leave here, get your car, and then roll up and pull your car up here between the victim officer and the suspect and use that for cover. But there's got to be some decisions. All right. So I'm all excited because it's been a long time since I've been in that scenario. But you see that you would have so many people make the wrong decision, but at least they made a decision. Sending the dog is maybe the wrong decision, but they made a decision. On 4 or 5 occasions, only across the United States, 4 or 5 occasions, I had people just snap to it and get it taken care of. I had one guy that was an ex-Marine. He might have been a Navy SEAL for all I know. He walked up to the scenario. The actor went out and got shot, and then the primary officer with the dog, he disappeared. He literally disappeared. I don't know where he was. Next thing I know, I see the victim, a suspect, just suddenly like magically pulled, and he's over here. It happened so quickly that I don't even know how it happened. I didn't have time to push the button for another gunshot, nothing. I don't know how he did it, but it literally, I'm not making anything up. Literally, this guy just was able to move and take charge and got everything done. And now the guy was behind cover, and then said, now we're going to call SWAT. We're going to contain the area. And it was like the best thing ever. I hope that guy ended up being chief of police somewhere doing something, because that is a decision maker, and he made the right decision. But the most important thing with the scenario is that so many people could not make a decision. So many people. Oh, was I on the way? My drawing is really bad. Sorry. All right. So I did that across the country. And again, a high percentile officers panicked and didn't know what to do. A very high percentage, way higher than I ever thought that could be. And with me even putting more pressure. And again, this is training. And that's why I preface this. This is training. They know that this is not real. They know that I'm not going to really kill them. But I had a couple officers just freeze up and say, I don't know what to do. And I'd say, make a decision. Not knowing what to do is not an excuse. Not ever having done this before is not an excuse. Not ever having been involved in a riot in a city as a mayor and a governor and not knowing what to do is not an excuse. Do something, man. Do something. Prepare. You know what? Okay, let's see what's happened in the past. Well, in the past, when we see somebody get killed by cops, especially when it's a white guy against a black cop, really bad things happen. All right, let's get prepared. Let's get these guys rolled up now. We may not need them, but let's get them rolled up. Right? Just like President Trump sent the ships to New York and California. We may not need them. We're going to spend millions of dollars having them, but we did it anyway, and they didn't get used. A little bit got used. But you see, that's a decision maker. That's saying, hey, we're going to spend a lot of money to get this done. They say they need it, so let's make it happen because we may need them. Thank God we didn't need them, right? Thank God we didn't need them. If we would have got all the military and the officers prepared and ready to go and didn't need them, wouldn't that have been a much better thing than what we're doing now? But it's the fear and the perception, the fear of deception, that you're going to upset the little few, right? The few people. They're going to upset. They're going to think that we're pushing the military. No, we need the military because we know what has happened in the past. You can justify it. You can say sorry, Sally, that you're upset that we had a military presence in your city, but we did not want for people to die. We didn't want to lose the buildings. We didn't want to lose the police station that had to be quickly evacuated because from officers had to be rescued from the rooftop. We didn't want that scenario to happen because we know from past incidents that that's some of the things that can happen. But instead, because we got ready early, none of that happened. As a matter of fact, this may be one of the worst things ever. The Rodney King video was pretty bad, but Rodney King survived. We saw a man murdered on video, and you did nothing because you were too afraid to make a decision. You did not arrest the officer because you were too afraid of what it would look like. You were too afraid to make a decision that somebody may question you about later on. But when you make a decision based on what you don't want to happen because of history and because of your experience and the experience of others, and you make a decision based on that, you can't really go wrong. You can make mistakes. You can do, you can say, hey, we spent all this money and you really didn't need it. No, we probably spent all that money and had that presence and didn't need it because of the presence, right? That's the better lesson. Again, sending the two empty medical floating hospitals now looks like, oh, shit, you spent a lot of money. And we only put 178 people in one of the ships when they could house 1,000. We spent whatever it was, let's say it's $35 million. We spent $35 million on 178 patients. Whew, that's a lot of money per patient, right? That's a lot of money. But what if we didn't and we needed them, right? Then, oh my God, he murdered 100,000 people. This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Does that all make sense to you? I hope that makes sense. And that's why I titled this, "The Fear of Making a Decision is Detrimental." That's the biggest problem we have in all areas, in all the areas. And then you have an idiot, moron, much stronger names for this guy. Those names do not even of that cop based on everything I've seen. I've seen these cops. I've worked with these cops. I've investigated these kinds of cops, and I'm hated by many law enforcement because I call them out. That for sure now they should have arrested 3, not 1. Why do I not pick on the guy who was standing there and did nothing? He looks really young. There's something, one of them said something like, "Don't you think he's had enough?" I don't know if it's him or not. So I'm wishy-washy on that 4th guy that's standing up. The 3 that were on the body, they definitely should have been all arrested today, not just 1. All 3 should have been arrested. You can always release 2 of them. And like we've done in the past, we've arrested a lot of people. I've arrested people and handcuffed them and put them back in the police car and find out, oh, it's the wrong guy. And you go to get him out and you go, "Oh, I'm sorry. You look like the guy. People were pointing at you like you were the guy. I apologize." You take off the handcuffs. You brush off their shirt because it's got dirt and leaves on it and sticks. And you say, "I'm sorry. If you want the number to my supervisor, if you want to go to the front counter, I'll actually give you a ride there if you want." And that's what you have to do. We've done it 100 times. There is no reason not to do that with these 3 and maybe 4 cops. You handcuff them in public where people can see you handcuffing them. I'm so sorry, law enforcement. I know that you hate me for saying this. I know. What kind of no, it sends a good signal. It sends a good signal that you're not afraid of making a decision of handcuffing police officers in an incident like this, where we're being looked at all across the world to show them that this is not allowed and it cannot happen. But you're too afraid to do that, aren't you? You did not see that officer being handcuffed, did you? Did you see any footage of that officer being handcuffed? Did you see anything? No, because they're afraid of upsetting the law enforcement community, right? It goes both ways. We saw no video of that suspect now, not an officer. Wait, I'm going to take the officer out of his name. He doesn't deserve police officer. He doesn't deserve it. But you didn't see that suspect being handcuffed and thrown to the ground like he should have been at gunpoint. That's what should have been shown. You know why they didn't do it? Because they're too afraid of the perception of how it would look. They're guilty on both ends of not taking action on the sense of arresting him and not showing what it looks like for a police officer to be handcuffed because he murdered somebody, murder 3 and possibly murder 2. And it needed to be done. And they didn't do it. They should have done that. That may have stopped anything that's going to happen. It's not going to stop anything that's happening. They're going to continue tonight. It is not enough. They're too late. They should have did it yesterday when I said they should have done it. My title yesterday said they needed to arrest him yesterday, not today. And they needed to do it with video cameras. And they needed to show him walking with his handcuffs on, nothing covering his face, right? With a hand on the back of his shirt, right? And a hand on the back of his shirt, hand on the handcuffs, and walking on the hands that are handcuffed, and walking them upright so everybody can see. The same face that was kneeling on George Floyd is the same face that has handcuffs on and being put in one of his old cars that he used to use. The handcuffs that were on George Floyd should have been on the suspect. I almost said officer. The handcuffs that were on George should have been on the officer. And we should have seen him walk into the car, then getting out of the car and taken into the jail cell. It all should have been on camera. But no, they didn't do that. They may do it for the other 3. Who knows? All right. Thank God I have a beer here. Fear. The fear of making decisions. Fear of making decisions have killed us all, gosh, over and over again. How it's perceived. The president talks too bad. He's talking strongly. It hurts my feelings. It triggers me. It doesn't trigger the majority of the country. It triggers a few people. Triggers a few, and then we keep pandering to the few. The few people that are just like, no. God, I'm frustrated. Jesus. And I'm not using his name in vain. I mean, Jesus, please save me and keep me sane and keep me from cussing. All right. So that's it for my show tonight. I'm so sorry, but I'm so frustrated. I was so angry today watching that press conference, and every word, like, what the fudge? Who did you guys elect over there? What the hell's going on? What the hell happened to our country? What the hell? My God. But yes, can you imagine how awful it must have been for them to suddenly be witnessing such an act? Thank you for being on, Bev. You kind of having Bev on. Bev was a dispatcher. She dispatched the entire time that I was a police officer. I think you may not have been there right when I started in '84. You probably weren't there in '84. You were probably still in high school, maybe in junior high in '84. But she was there a very long time. We had a long career together. She used to tell me where to go, and I used to go, even if I didn't want to. But having Bev on here, it makes me feel like there's somebody on there that I can speak freely and say what I'm saying. And she can tell me if I'm lying. She can tell you if I'm lying. I had a way of talking on the radio for the most part that I never liked to show that whatever was happening to me at the time, whether I was wrestling with somebody, fighting with somebody, that you have to stay calm. If you can keep your calm voice, and she knows those officers that were not calm. They would sometimes be stressed over very little things. And you'd have to say 10-9, which is repeat. You say 10-9, they couldn't. I need somebody here, and their voice would elevate. Right? Normally they have a voice like mine. Next thing it sounds like, is that the right guy? It doesn't sound like him because he's a little bit panicked, right? He's a little bit. There's something going on there, and then all he wants is like one officer or something like that. It sounded like he needed the whole police department, right? But I worked at it and really concentrated that when I was in a stressful situation, I was in a lot of pursuits. In a lot of cases, for God, I told you, my dog bit 80 bad guys. I was nearly killed. They tattooed my dog's face on my shoulder because my dog saved my life. A guy hiding behind a door with a gun who was waiting for me to walk in, and he was going to shoot me. So I've been in these situations, but you have to maintain a sense of calm so you can make good decisions. Again, I'm not saying good decisions are always the right decision. It's just you got to make a decision. And most decisions, if you make them with a calm thought, are going to be either right or close to being right. And they're not going to be horribly wrong. There were some horribly wrong decisions made as a law enforcement officer. And one of them, and I wrote about it in my book, really cost me a lot of my psyche because I was right at that time. And I was telling the sergeant he was wrong and he wouldn't listen to me. And I'm telling him, no, we cannot do what you want to do. No, I do not agree. And he says, I'm ordering you to do this thing. And then when they say, I'm ordering you to do this thing, there's really very little recourse, and because I didn't know if I was right or wrong. I just had a strong feeling. At the moment I did what he told me to do, the guy shot himself with the gun that he had been holding to his chin and wasn't pulling the trigger because I was so close and I was right there and I was talking to him and I was saying, listen, I understand. And I made a connection with him and I understood what he was going through, but I didn't want him to pull the trigger. And the sergeant wanted me to move. And I said, I'm not moving. And he says, you're moving. And I said, Sergeant, we cannot move. And he said, I'm ordering you to move back. And I said, if I move back, he's going to pull the trigger. And I was ordered and I moved back and he pulled the trigger. And that was a tough time. Boy, was that a tough time. So I'm telling you, it was a decision. He made a decision. I'm telling you, not all decisions are good ones. Not all decisions are the right ones, but he made a decision. His decision was based on the fact that we were on the 91 freeway, one of the busiest freeways on the planet. And he was concerned because where this was occurring was in the center lane of the westbound freeway into Los Angeles through Anaheim. And it was something like 5 o'clock, 4:30, 5 o'clock, and traffic was going to start to build up. And he wanted to clear this incident out of the roadway. And I said, who gives a crap? They can go around. They can find other ways to work and they could be late and all this other stuff. And he says, no, we're opening this up. We need to end this right now. So back up and he'll whatever. And then he shot himself right in front of me as I was watching. Oh, you remember that, Bev? Yeah, that was, thank you, Bev. And I hope you're not saying that just because I put pressure on you, but I really worked hard, and I was told often by dispatchers, like, we didn't know whether you were serious or not because the way you sounded, this didn't sound like you needed that much help. No, I needed a lot of help. I was in trouble. All right. Being offended is a choice. It is absolutely a choice. Being offended is a choice. Absolutely. I love that, Jeff. Thank you. This is more of a shot night. All right. So that's it. There's a lot of really good comments on here. You guys are so good. And I hope, again, I hope I didn't offend anybody, but you got to come in and there's law enforcement. Again, just last thing. Law enforcement has a role. You can't be pussyfoot around and you can't be heavy handed, but you have to have command presence. If you don't have command presence and the ability to enforce the laws in a manner that is forceful enough that you're not overtaken and overcome, then you're doing your job. Just because I'm wearing a black uniform with blouse boots and driving a black and white patrol car, driving in and get out and ordering people around doesn't make me a bad guy. I'm coming in there to maintain or regain order. So then we can have a good discussion to figure out how we can solve the problem. Sometimes in situations, you had to come in with force and say, everybody just back off, get on the ground, prone out, and we're going to sort this out. And you do it in a way that causes people to take action. If you come in and you're going, excuse me, yeah, we're here from the police department, the one down the street, and what we would like, fuck you, and then they start, right? That's what's going to happen, right? So there's a fine line. I understand that there's this alley that we have to walk in as law enforcement. Can't be too soft, you can't be too hard, right? You can't be brutal, and you can't be P words, right? You can't be wussies. All right. You got to be in the middle, make sound decisions, give somebody a hug. Sometimes I've given people hugs. I've carried people out of buildings when they needed to be carried out of buildings. I have hugged people. I have said, I understand, but I have to take you to jail. And I'm sorry that I've been that guy and said, I know. And the people are, don't take me to jail. I am so sorry. But this was done. We'll take you to jail. I'll make sure that you are okay and you are safe. And I need to put the handcuffs on because that's the policy. And I'm going to get you in the jail cell. We'll process you. You'll be like a drunk driver, right? Some drunk drivers are just like a mess because it's like their third drunk driving in there. They're going, no, I get, right? And they're just a mess. But, you have to have some compassion even for the guilty. You have to have compassion for the guilty, right? Even the child molesters. I've told you stories about how I had to get out because I was finding it difficult to have compassion for the child molesters. It was causing me grief and I was going to hurt somebody, right? And so you got to understand, make some decisions. And so just understand. And I hope, again, I know I go too far sometimes. My assistant tells me, I was watching you and you started going too far and I couldn't watch anymore. Well, I'm sorry. That's just who I am and that's what I do. So that's it. I'm going to stop now because I have 35 years of stories that I can tell you, and you don't want to hear them all. I hope the stories that I use were relevant. This story here is relevant. You can see what happens when people are put under pressure in training, and you can just imagine what happens when they're really under pressure, right? The governor is probably a good guy. Mayor may or may not be a good guy. I don't know. You got Congress people, you got senators, you got council people, you got chiefs of police, lieutenants, captains. You got a lot of people that you have to kind of get through to make a freaking decision. One of you make a decision, right? If they're all not making decisions, we have problems. And that, all the people there in Minnesota, not one person can make a good decision at this point. Not one of them. And they're going to go back to the tweet. Well, the president tweeted. Who gives a shit what the president tweeted? You pansies? Who cares? Calm down. All right, that's it. Thanks, Bev. I know I ended on a Trump note. I probably shouldn't have. I hope this has been helpful. I don't know if it's been helpful. I want you to know that this has been mismanaged, and I know that that's maybe not helpful, but I have some thoughts of sending out my resume and my CV to Minnesota and saying, if you need somebody to come in here that has experience dealing, because obviously you guys don't. They have no experience in dealing with a department who has a culture, an obvious culture. You got a guy with 13 prior excessive use of force things, and he's still working and allowed to kill somebody. You have a culture that's been created. I have an experience of dealing with this on a regular basis for the last 20 years, something like that. I looked the other day and I think it was somewhere close to 20 years I've been dealing with this very type of thing and making decisions based on whether people should be charged or not on a regular basis. And so I have some thought of writing some type of letter. If anybody knows anybody there in the leadership of Minnesota that I could directly get something to, just to go say, hey, listen, you need somebody that comes in and knows that I've done this. I can tell you haven't done this. I can tell because you're saying things that are not correct. They're just simply not. They're wrong. And to get on television and say something so blatantly wrong because you're trying to cover your ass is problematic. And so I've had that thought all day, and I'm thinking, what could I write that would actually get through? What could I do? How could I get in there? Do I drive to Minnesota and go to the governor's office and knock on the door and say, listen, you need my help, because I know some stuff and it might be helpful. I don't know. If anybody has any ideas, feel free to send me a message. And if you know somebody that knows somebody, or that somebody that knows somebody. All right, that's it. Oh, then now for sure. I know I had already people ready to sign up. They're getting ready to close your phone. Oh, no, he's still talking. Why is he still talking? I thought he was over. All right, that's it. I'll talk to you later. Bye.